I'm Alyssa Atwood. I'm an assistant professor, and I study a field of science called paleoclimatology. So we study how Earth's climate system has changed in the past. We went to a place called Christmas Island, which is a collection of islands in the country of Kiribati, and it sits right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, the equatorial Pacific Ocean. It's basically due south of Hawaii. It's part of a long-standing research site for me because it sits right at the heart of where temperature and rainfall anomalies associated with the El Niño Southern Oscillation occur. And a big part of what my group studies is how ENSO events are changing today and how what's happening now, how we can contextualize that far back in the past. And in Christmas Island, we can go to different sites on the island and pick up old coral skeletons that have just been deposited onto the beaches during major storm surges. And we can pick up coral that go back to about 7,000 years. We look at the oxygen isotope composition in the coral skeleton, and that tells us a couple things. It tracks temperature partly, and that just has to do with sort of the thermodynamics of the system and how the coral itself is bringing in that oxygen from the surrounding seawater, and there's a temperature component to that. That also tracks the oxygen isotope composition of the surrounding seawater, which is very tightly related to salinity. So we can actually pick up both salinity and temperature signals by looking at the oxygen isotope composition. We also look at a series of different trace elements in the coral, and the partitioning of those elements between the surrounding seawater and the coral is temperature dependent. And then we can get both salinity and temperature by measuring those things in tandem. Then you get a really nice ENSO signal from that because it has this very striking temperature and rainfall signal, which affects salinity. I brought two of my students, Taylor Conklin, who is a master's student in oceanography here, and David Shu, who is a PhD student in geography.
We collected a lot of corals previously from 2012 on, and a lot of these corals were in storage and they needed to be processed. And so we took dating chips from them so that we would be able to take them back to the lab and process them and figure out how old they were. And a lot of them were within the last 1,000 years, which particularly pertains to my research. So I'm looking at ENSO and how it varied within the last millennium within the central tropical Pacific.
So I am more in the modeling and computational side of things. And so I spent a lot of times behind a computer screen looking at precipitation patterns in the Pacific. And so finally being there and actually being so close, especially at the onset of El Niño, which we know has a lot of implications, not just for the tropical Pacific, but also extratropical climate. And also here in Florida, it affects us because through vertical wind shear and what happens with wind direction and wind speed at different vertical levels affects hurricane formation and development and can affect Florida. So knowing that sort of the teleconnections and the dynamics of it all, and that I was there in the area where you can really track ENSO changes was really cool. They sort of ground truth a lot of the things that I look at through the computer screen.